So, over the past few weeks, there have been some residents that have been noticing some fish that have been deceased and they're washing up on the beach. Um, and this can be like a very big problem because, like, we swim there, we eat there, we fish there, and like our children run along the beach and they play games, and then imagine their surprise whenever they look out onto the water and they see a bunch of dead fish floating on the water. That's not really something a kid really wants to see, let alone an adult. Um, so what can be the causes for that? And I think that it has to do with a very toxic chemical known as PCB. And what that is that it is inside of carbon copy paper, it's inside of paints, dyes, it's inside of plastic and rubber products, it's inside of industrial equipment. So each of these things have something in common, and it's they all become trash. And the fact that they all become trash states that eventually something is going to wind up in the ocean. For example, do you know like those little pop containers or those packages, those little plastic containers for pop cans that sometimes winds up around a turtle's neck? That's a plastic product, so it has PCB in it. So just coming in contact with that turtle has absorbed some of the PCB. And, like the fish, they eat it. They can eat it. They can live in it, possibly. They can find a home in it. Or, it just gets dumped in the ocean and they get trapped. And these chemicals are being absorbed into their bodies because the easiest way is through ingesting and through skin contact. It can be absorbed that way. And that can be bad for us too, because we can get very sick by ingesting the contaminated fish, because it starts to screw around with our TC cells, or not TCs, TH cells, I'm sorry. And it can mess with, like reproductive organs or reproductive cells. And it's not really a fun experience. So the ways that it can possibly be regulated and to help stop it is to stop throwing trash in the ocean. That's a big thing, is to just stop throwing trash in the ocean. I know like big companies or, just like people just not thinking about it and just not caring and throwing their trash wherever, and it ends up in the ocean. Sometimes it's not with any fault of anybody, but these plastic water bottles that we have, or like rubber bands, or like any sort of like carbon copy paper, or even like your kid's painting, if it ends up in the trash, there's a possibility that it can end up in the ocean if you're not careful. And the chemicals from those things can get inside of our fish. And with the chemical being as harsh as it is, it can be very, very detrimental, and not many fish can fight it off, but there are some that can. There's a type of river fish that might be able to fight it off, but it's getting to the point where it can't anymore. The already contaminated fish, actually, it can still enter into our system. So, whenever you catch the fish, or whenever you go swimming, or whenever you go fishing, if you catch a fish and you want to bring it home and you want to eat it, the best thing to do to stop the PCB from getting into your system is to skin the fish, is to trim off the fat, and bake it or boil it, because it gets rid of that it gets rid of that oil and that fatty tissue, because that's where the PCB is. That's where it builds up at. It can build up at the bottom of rivers with like sediments and solids, but a lot of times it comes from our trash. It comes from the trash buildup that ends up getting into our waterways. And we need to figure out a way to stop that, because the more trash that we throw in our waterways, especially in the ocean, the more fish are going to be contaminated, and then the more of us are going to get sick. Thanks for listening.